So we're here with Bryan Furze. Bryan, good to see you again.
Nice to
I
see
know
you.
you're a longtime town meeting member. You were a member of the planning board, and I understand you're on the Granite Ave Study Committee as well.
Yes, I was the chair of the Granite Ave Study Committee, which was probably almost 12, 15 years ago now that we did that.
Wow. Well, so with that background and involvement, I'm sure you have some interesting perspectives to share. Tell me, why are you voting yes on February 13th?
I'm voting yes on February 13th because it's good planning and it's the right thing to do and it's the law. The planning in this town has been woefully deficient as it relates to providing diversified housing since 1938 when the zoning was codified. And when I was on the planning board, we tried to put together a condo bylaw. We tried to put together a great estates bylaw, which would have allowed us to preserve some of the larger homes in town with some additional density. We tried to put together an accessory dwelling unit bylaw. We did many, many different things to try to bring forward some diverse housing for our community, for our workforce, for our younger people, for our empty nesters who are looking to downsize. Ultimately, we were thwarted at every turn by people in this town that don't believe that Milton should change. And the functional flaw with that logic is that the world has changed around us. Whether it's the economy, whether it's the type of housing that people are looking for, whether it's the school's needs, whether it's our budgetary needs, for a variety of different reasons, Milton needs to adapt and evolve like all of the communities around us do. And unfortunately, what we've come down to is a state mandate to force us to do what's right, which is to create that diverse housing that has good access to public transit and provide options for our residents.
In the law that we voted at a town meeting that's out on the ballot on the 13th, if that fails, these matters get worse?
I think it gets worse for a variety of reasons. First of all, what's in front of the town right now went through a very thorough public process. There were over 40 public hearings on this between the select board and the planning board. Town meeting debated the issues for 2 nights for over probably 6 or 7 hours. And after being informed and after the thorough public process that these state mandated zoning went through, town meeting endorsed it with a 2/3 majority vote. That's a supermajority vote. A minority of town meeting members then decided to use a very hardly recognized, hardly known provision in Mass state law to go out and get 2,000 signatures. They got 3,000 signatures to overturn town meeting vote. That does a couple of things. First of all, you've gone out and gotten signatures from people who probably don't know much about the issue. And have now decided to go against all of the people who have been informed by the process and by town meetings, debates, and by the speakers at town meeting to make a quick decision to support something that I think is a wrong decision. You also have very much invalidated the integrity of town meeting by having elected officials make a supermajority vote and then allow the minority who didn't win to go out and use this process to bring it to the ballot. I'm not sure that that's going to be great for town meeting in the long run. I'm not sure how you continue to encourage people to run for town meeting and sit in front of town meeting for 4, 5, 6 nights in a row, several times a year, when they have families at home, they have lives, they have jobs. It's really tough if town meeting's vote has been, the integrity of town meeting's vote has been really diminished by this single action.
Well, Bryan, it probably is no surprise to you. I strongly share that perspective. As former town moderator, I'm a huge, and I've been in town meeting myself for more than 30 years. And I believe town meeting is a terrific form of government where we get terrific results.
I agree. I think you have people who are elected to serve. That means that they take time to campaign, go out and get signatures, in many cases spend money to advertise, and commit to coming to these meetings, preparing for them, reading the warrant, sitting in front of speakers and presenters for many, many nights, many, many hours to really understand what they're voting on. It's an informed vote. It's democracy at its finest. and you are going with majority minority votes, and hopefully making the right decision for the town. I think the other thing that needs to be understood about this zoning, and all zoning, is that it's evolutionary. So just because we enact this zoning today does not mean that we can't bring it forward to town meeting again in May, in October, in 2025, and tweak it to make it more appropriate for what the town has evolved to, adapts to, or if we made a mistake, we can fix it. The parts of town, with a few exceptions, that are being affected by this zoning are basically built out. So there's a myth out there that you're going to suddenly create thousands and thousands of housing units. That's not possible. All of the land, a majority of the land that's covered by this zoning is currently occupied by single family or 2 or 3 family homes. Those homes are not suddenly going to all go away. So this is a piece of zoning that's being put in place to contemplate 50 years of development, which is what zoning is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be done for a moment of time. The one parcel that is arguably vacant land, which is the Granite Ave, is currently a parking lot that is a park and ride very rarely used by any commuters. The DPW stores salt and other chemicals on that land. The water problems that are created by flooding and overrun from the highway and overrun from nearby bodies of water and tributaries creates constant ponding there, which is bad for the environment, which is bad for insect population, and worse, it's a lot that has become used by nefarious uses, whether it's drug deals, whether it's loitering. There's lots of things that an empty parking lot beside an interstate freeway can create that are not great for our town. And I'm very sympathetic to the neighbors in the adjacent neighborhood. They spoke at every hearing at our Granite Ave Study Committee many, many years ago, and we absolutely took every one of their comments into consideration. And the one resounding thing that committee came back to over and over again was that the worst result was to do nothing, was to leave this barren piece of land that creates no sound barrier to the highway, that creates constant flooding issues, and that creates nefarious behavior right next to this lovely residential neighborhood that backs up to the marshes and is a lovely place to live. So I would argue that all of the concerns about traffic and school population, we need to be more educated on how we make these arguments. We shouldn't just say no to something because of fear. The reality is that any zoning, any development proposal that comes before our planning board, our zoning board, our elected officials to move a project forward is going to take this zoning into consideration. And this zoning is not going to just let a project go into place that's going to decimate our roadways or decimate our schools. Development brings mitigation, whether it's bike lanes, sidewalks, traffic calming measures like speed bumps or rotaries, anything that you can do to create something better than a 4-lane highway that's zooming by this neighborhood every day, day after day. So it's troubling that people bring their nose out of fear. Because I think if they really dug into the zoning, what they would find is that the zoning is designed to make things better.
That's terrific. That's a great perspective, Bryan, and frankly, it's with your background that you're able to share that, and we appreciate your comments.
Sure. I didn't answer one of your questions, which was about, will it be worse if we don't put this zoning in place? I'm very afraid of what will happen in this town if we don't put this zoning into place. There are a couple of specific things I'm very concerned about. The first is the state's wrath will be potentially unleashed. The state has put forward a mandate that is affecting dozens of communities, and Milton is the only community that has chosen to not comply.
Possibly chosen.
Or possibly chosen to not comply. Thank you. If that goes forward, the state has a lot of reasons to make sure that there's an example set that they are going to enforce their zoning challenges that they're asking their communities to put in place. The results of that could be significant impacts on our funding. There have been estimates that it could be as high as $1.7 million annually. And the thing that scares me the most, to be honest with you, is that the state through the courts could then enact zoning on our community that will go through zero process. So the courts would theoretically have the opportunity to come in and take away all of the process that was put in place to very carefully select these areas that we've chosen to comply with this law, and very carefully manipulated this zoning to make it as minimally impactful as possible. And instead just put zoning in place that meets the state's requirements with absolutely no consideration for what the town actually needs. And the damage that could do to property values, to our traffic, to our schools, to all of the things that the vote no people are worried about could be monumental. So I would really challenge people to think about enacting this zoning and knowing that we have process, very good process, over the next several years. If the zoning isn't perfect, we can get it there. And also to trust the process that will keep large projects from coming in and running over our town. Because with 40B and other ways for developers to come in and do large projects in our community, our boards have held, our character has held. You have the Carberry Estate, which was developed extremely responsibly. You have 88 Wharf, a great development. All of the Milton Village was developed. And all this was done through thoughtful, curated zoning. And that's what we're trying to enact here. Thoughtful, curated zoning that is meeting the needs of most of Milton's residents for what today's communities and today's realities require.
Terrific. Thank you, Bryan.
You're welcome. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.